Hey everybody, and welcome to the 11th lesson of this RTS tutorial series. This lesson is going to be split into two parts due to the sheer length of it. In the first part, we're going to set up the functionality of the first two lines in our HUD, which will be our date and time. In the second video, we'll set up the controls for our speed and the progress bar related to that. The second video will be uploaded about an hour to 2 hours after this video, so stay forward or stay tuned for that, and fire up the editor, and I'll see you on the other side. Alright, so we have a lot to get through today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the communication between our HUD and our game state. So I'm going to go into my blueprints, and I'm going to go into my library, and I'm going to go to my RTS GameTime interface. The interface, again, is what communicates between, or passes information between variables, between blueprints. I'm going to create a new function, which I will name I'm going to name it get game clock, set game clock, and I am going to add in one variable in here called game time as an input. This variable will be a integer. It will be an array, and I'm going to add in one output. It will be a boolean, and it will be a single variable, and this will be called success. Success, if you're familiar with C++ code, is that return value in the function. So this would either return 0 in a main function of any C++ code. I'm going to compile and save. And I am going to do a calendar one as well, which I will do as a new function called set game calendar. And again, I'm just going to do the output first, which will be our success boolean. The reason I've done the output first is I don't have to change it. I know it's going to be a boolean when I click that. And this one will be our game date, and it will be a type integer, again, an array, and I'm going to compile and save. Just double check that it's set up correctly there. It is. So our interface is now set up. Now we need to tell the two parts to talk to each other. So before we can tell the game state to talk to the HUD, we need to tell the HUD that it can be talked to through this interface. So go to our widget, open our HUD up, and go into your event graph. Now, in here, you'll notice that I am missing my event on begin play, tick, and all that other stuff. I deleted it. I am re-recording this video because I found a couple of mistakes that I wanted to address. So just go ahead and delete those. You won't need them. And in here, go to your class your class settings, and you will notice on the left-hand side, if you have the default view, this interface section. In here, hit add, just like we did before. Type in RTS GameTime IF, compile and save. Alright, go back to the designer. We'll come back in here in a minute. Go to your content browser, go to your game settings. You'll notice a game state picks up a unsaved icon. The reason it does this is when you update the interface, you are also updating anything associated with it. So the game state picked up two new interface functions, which we won't need to worry about. What we're going to worry about is we're going to set our calendar and our clock. So open up your function for set clock and set calendar. We're going to start in the calendar, and I'm going to drag in my reference for the controller. So we're going to get the controller, and in our controller we have a reference to our HUD. So I'm just going to type in HUD, and I'm going to get HUD GameTime reference. Now everything I want to do is related to this HUD. So off of here I'm going to drag, and I'm going to type in set game, and this is a calendar, so calendar. And you have the function, which we don't want, and you have the interface. We have an interface call and a message. We want the message, so click that. Drag from the original set you have into the new set game calendar. And if you want to leave the debugging code up, which I will for just the remainder of this video, drag off the set game calendar message into the print string, and take the game date and plug it into the game date on the interface message. Compile and save. Close out the calendar and repeat the same for the clock. So off the clock, drag in a reference to your controller. From there, get a reference to your HUD. Off the HUD, we want to send a message, set game clock. This will be a message. And again, GameTime plugs into GameTime. We execute into the set game date. A game date into GameTime. And then I'm going to leave the debug code up for a bit, so I'm going to drag it off from the execute on the game clock, or set game clock, to the print string, compile, and save. Now all of our clock information is being passed from the interface to our HUD. We're going to close that out because we don't need our game state anymore. And actually, let's go back to our graph for a second. We need to tell our HUD to receive this information. We've said you can be talked to, but now receive information. So let's go into our set game calendar, and let's drag off our game date, and we're going to create click promote to variable. We'll name this one game date, and we'll just plug the execute pins up. Off success, just select it so this runs properly. Compile and save. I'm just going to create a new category called calendar. And now let's go back to our graph. Compile and save real quick. We are going to do each of these items one at a time. So we're going to start with this date. And here where we set the date to 30, we're going to click bind, create new binding. I'm going to open this function tab up here, and I'm going to name this binding get date. Actually, I'm going to rename that get day. So get the day. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in this game date. I'm going to get it. From here, I'm going to actually get a copy of the first item in the array. If you don't remember what your arrays look like, go back to your game state and look at them. I just know that I've done 0 as day, 1 as month, 2 as year, 0 as second, 1 as minute, and 2 as hours for the clock and calendar. Reverse the respectivity on that one. I'm going to drag off of here, and I'm going to promote to local variable, and this will be day local. All a local variable is a variable that's being created and initialized inside a particular function. It is only able, therefore, to be seen by that function. In terms of C++ code, this is literally where you write your initialization of a variable. If you write it inside your function or outside of it. If you write it inside the function, it's local. If it's outside, it's global. So I am not a huge fan of the calendar not having 2 digits in it at all times for the date. I like it saying 01, 02, and then 10, 11. So I'm going to add in a branch. You can skip part of this if you don't mind it having just 1. So I'm going to type in branch, and I'm going to check to see if the day local is equal to or less than 9. So I'm going to get, and then I'm going to do less than or equal to 9. If you use the same setup I'm using and for some reason this doesn't work, change this to less than, so drop the equal to, and then set it to 10. So if it is less than or equal to, if it is greater than or equal, if it is greater than 9, so it's equal to 10, then we don't want it to do anything. We just want it to pass this information through as is. So we're going to do, the way we do that is we're going to create a variable called day text local, which will be a string. We'll set the default value as 0. I'm just going to compile it because I'm so used to doing that still. And I'm going to set it on the false there. And then I'm going to also set it on the true up here, but I'm going to do something different than the true. Off the false, so if it's 10 or greater, I'm going to say get day local and convert that integer into a string and just plug that in. So if it is less than, if it is greater than 9, then it will automatically display 10, 11, and so forth. However, if it's less than 9, less than 10, I want to add a 0. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to drag back off of this pin here, type in append, and in this append, I'm going to plug in my daytext local and A. And the reason I'm doing that is to set the default to 0. Yeah, I could just hard code it in by undoing this pin and typing 0 in. I don't like hard coding like that, even though you'll see me do it a little bit later in this lesson. I'm going to drag in my day local, and I'm just going to have it convert for that B there. And then I'm going to actually plug a reroute into there, and plug that into there. And we're pretty much done. All we have to do is actually say, display this information now. It's getting the information, but it's not displaying it. And that's our return value. So you have to get it to display, drag out your get day text, and then convert it over. If you compile and save, and hit play, we should see now 14 instead of the default 30 show up. Because when I originally did the date, I did it on February 14th, and I set it to the current date. It's now March, so it's been a while since I've done these videos. Hit play, and you see 14 up there. You see 14 over here in our debug, so we know it's working correctly. We can close that out, and we can close out our get day. Let's go back to our designer. Also, we probably could have closed out the other function we had there. And this one's a little bit different. We are going to handle this by having it display a name. It's currently getting a number, though, in our calendar. So the way we deal with that is we're going to create an enum. Now, I've tried multiple versions of this with different setups, just using a string library, using enums, using just hard coding things in. The last one's the messiest. The string was just too complex for it to make any sense. It's great for dialogue, great for subtitles. Wasn't great for this. The enums is the best way to do that. So I'm going to create a new folder called enums, and in here I'm going to go to blueprints. I'm going to select enumeration, and I'm going to type in month names enum. And in here, I'm going to create 13 different month names. Yes, I said 13. So the first one, actually, let me pin this correctly. The first one I'm going to create, and you don't need to do this anymore. I do it for two reasons. One, when enums first got introduced, or when I first got introduced to enums, I was taught you always had to have a blank one as the first one to avoid issues. The second reason, if you notice, the enum starts at 0. So the rank is 0 here, and it makes my life a little bit easier if I have a blank one in there. So I'm going to do underscore blank, and I'm then going to add another one, and this one will be my January. Just watch, I'm going to spell these all wrong. I'm going to type in new, we'll do February, and I'm going to keep doing this until I am at December. There is no point in you watching me do all of this. Hey, our current month. You know how many months there are. You've seen me do the first 3 months and that blank. I'm going to just pause my recording and pick up when I've completed putting these in, and I'll see you in a couple of seconds. Alright, welcome back. As you can see, I have them all in now. Probably spelled a couple wrong. I won't notice until later on. So now that that's in, we can close out this enum. Let's go back to our HUD, and here where we set it to say September as a default, let us create a new binding, which we're going to name Get Month. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to create a new category. And this will be calendar. And likewise, this will go to calendar. So in Get Month, things are, again, fairly simple, just like it was in Get Day. It gets a little bit more complex when we get into the clock. What we're going to do is we're going to create a reference to our enum. So I'm going to create a new variable. I'm going to name it month name ref. And under variable type, I'm going to type in the name of my enum until I find it. So month names enum. And I'm going to compile and save. I'm going to create a category called references. And then I'm going to drag that variable here to get month and have it set. You'll see it defaults to blank there. Well, we need to tell it what month to pull. So to do that, I'm going to get game date. I'm going to drag off of here. And I am going to do another get copy. I am going to, just to be on the safe side, clamp this integer with a minimum value of 1, even though, you know, it should say 1 because I have told the particular variable we're pulling from to always say, to say 1 and 12, and set a max of 12. That said, I also need to change this to a 1 because we are now pulling from the calendar. Move this over a tiny bit and move that over a tiny bit as well, so we need a little bit more room. I'm going to drag off this return value and I'm going to type in 2 byte. So integer to byte. Now these might look like they hook up. They don't. We need one more. We need to do to that particular enum. So I'm going to type in my enum name again. And I'm going to get byte to enum month name enum, select it, and now I can hook it up. Just going to move these up here a little bit so it's a little bit nicer. Just to make it look pretty. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag off of this return node and I'm going to put it into a toString. Enum toString, not toString byte, enum toString, or this will not work. And then I'm going to drag off of this and plug it into the return value here, which will give me a toText string. I'm going to compile and save, and then I'm going to test it, make sure we see the word February. Yeah, seeing February. Interesting. So I'm going to remove this clamp, and I'm just going to plug it straight into there. I'm going to compile and save, see if it works. There we go. We are getting our February. I forgot, we don't need the clamp because I have redesigned how I'm approaching this. So that's set up for our month. We're going to save, and actually I can probably move all of these just a little bit closer that way. There we go. Put that a little bit more in line with how the other ones are set up. And save it one final time. Let's go back to our graph. And we have our year. Like before, create binding. This will be, of course, get year. It will be a category of course, calendar. And this one is probably the most straightforward out of these three. What we are going to do is we are going to get our date. We are going to drag from this and get a reference to a particular set of items in that array. So the vector we want is the third one. Oh, sorry, the second one, which is the third one. So 0, 1, 2. So that's our year. Now, what isn't straightforward about this is it will not display correctly if we have 4 digits. So I want to promote this to a local variable, and this will be year local. And just going to set it here and hook that execute to the return there. And I'm going to take my year local, going to get it, going to place it into that return value. We get our conversion to integer. What I'm going to do differently, though, is I'm going to, from this integer, I'm going to click this down arrow, and where it says use grouping, this means it's going to add a comma after the going from the right to the left after the third digit. I don't want that. I don't want it to say 2, 0, 1, 9. I want to say 2019 as I would write it. So I'm going to get rid of use grouping, compile, save. We're going to hit play to test. It says 2019. I'm going to turn grouping back on just for a second to make sure this is actually working because it'll display incorrectly. And you see the commas in there, 2019 as a number. Get rid of that. And it's set up. So we've now set up our calendar. Next comes the hard part, our clock. So the first thing we're going to do for our clock is we're going to get the information to run our clock. So we're going to go in here. We're going to promote this to a variable, and this one will be our game time. And we're going to pass it out, hit success, and move this to our calendar. I don't know why I haven't named it calendar. This should actually be, I meant to name this game time. This calendar, this game date 1 can also go into game time. There we go. Compile and save. So let's close out every one of these set of functions we are not going to be working with. We are going to work with the event graph in half a second. The first thing you're going to do is we're not going to set up the hours, the minutes, the special AM second thing. We're going to do the button first, because this one will actually dictate a lot about how these other ones work. So I'm going to highlight my mil-sieve button, and I'm going to scroll down to on-clicked. I'm going to hit the add sign. And on-click, what I want is I want it to set a value for me on a boolean. So I'm going to create that boolean first, and I'm going to name it is military time. Or I could also name it is 24-hour clock. But because this is an RTS, and we typically think about RTSs as military versus city planning, I like the idea of military versus civilian time. It's a boolean. I'm going to compile it and save real quick, so I want to set the default to yes. And I always put my booleans in a category that I call bool. And from here, I'm going to drag off and I'm going to type in flip. And I'm going to select flip-flop from the bottom here. What happens with flip-flop is when you press something, the first time it does one thing. The next time you press it, it does something else. So a good way to think about this with terms of like a first-person shooter is the crouch button. Do you have to hold the crouch button down to stay crouched, or do you have to hit it once to go to the crouched position and then hit it again to stand back up? If you have to hit it once to go to the crouched position, then you have a flip-flop set up. So off the A on our flip-flop, I am going to set military time to false because it is already true when it starts. And when they hit it again, I'm going to set it to true. That sets up the functionality of the clock. If you really wanted to test it, this is how you do it. You hit play. You're going to be scrolling for a bit there. You go back to your event. You go back to your graph. You hit the HUD, or you switch over to the debugger. You go back into here. You move it so you can see what you need to do, so you can see the graph, and then you hit the button. As I hit the button, you can see that it's switching each time I click. All right, so that works. Go back to your designer and go to your hours, and then we're going to do what we did before. We are going to set a new binding. So create binding. This one we'll name as get hour, and this can go all the way over here. We're going to need plenty of room actually. I am slightly anal retentive about where that sits. Unhook it real quick. So the first thing we need to do is we need to drag in our game time. We're going to get it. And from here, we are going to, again, get a copy. We are getting the largest value from our array, which is our hours, which I've put as the highest value in that array, which is the second value. This will be a local variable again for hours local. Hook that up into there. And what we need now is we're going to get a branch. We're going to drag off of here, put a branch in, and we're going to get our military time. So if it is military time, it's going to go to true. If it is not, if we want the 12-hour clock, it will go to false. So the first thing we're going to do, because technically when it displays military time, you need to always have all 4 digits. So 0, 1, 0, 2. We are going to put another branch in to check what time, to check if it's a single digit or not. So we're going to put branch. We are going to get our local hours. And we are going to check if it is less than or equal to 10. Sorry about that. I'm just going to wait to Visual Studio to pop up so I can close that out. Less than or equal to 10. I'm going to plug that into here. And I'm just going to think about that for 1 second. I might have meant to put 9 in there. Sorry, it's greater than or equal to 10. Not less than. I am correct on how I'm doing this. If it is 10 or greater, then we don't want to do anything. So we're going to create a new local variable called hours text local, which will be, of course, a string type. The default value will be 0. We'll compile that. And we're going to set it here. And what will be set to is it will be set to the hours local. Have a nice little conversion node in there. There we go. Just going to put into the reroute in so it can go up a little bit more nicely. There we go. It's actually looking better than the nice version I did for myself. Drag off this hours local, put it onto the false. Now, what we're going to do is very similar to what we did earlier. We are going to, I don't know if I'm thinking about the earlier recording or something I've already done in this. I'm trying to remember where I would have done this. No, it's like what we did with the date here. We are going to append this. So we are going to type in append. We get that nice little graph there. Again, we could hard code a 0 in. I don't like doing that. I'm going to have to do it for the special part of this, the special second special thing anyway. So we're going to have hours local, putting that 0 in. We'll get our hours local integer. It will convert over. And we now have both sets for our time there. Just going to drag into there. Put a reroute down here. Ooh, sorry, did not mean to do that. Put that back where I got it from. Plug that in. So that sets up our military time. So we check if it's after 10 a.m. If it is, just display the time as is. If not, add a 0 to the start of it. However, we haven't set up our 12-hour clock or our civilian time. Again, we need to check what time it is because we need to set our AM and PMs and change over from, sorry, not AMs and PMs. We need to change over from a 24-hour setup to a 12-hour setup. So that's the first part we're going to do. We'll put our branch in to do that. And we are going to do a greater than or equal to again. So I'm just going to copy this over and paste it down. Except for it's not going to be 10 o'clock. It's going to be 13 because we're dealing with a 12-hour clock. If the local hours is 13 or greater, or set to 13 or greater, then we want to change it to a 12-hour clock. And the way we do that is we're going to set our local hours by a int minus integer. Let me just move this up slightly. There we go. Move that out. Int minus integer, and we're going to minus it by, we're going to subtract 12, sorry, and what we're subtracting 12 from is our current hours. So if we have 13, it's going to say, yep, that's true, pass it through here, take the 13 minus 12 from it, and return a 1. This will be our hours local as text. So we can just drag that into there. And that is all set. We can literally plug that into there. Now, what do we need to do with this false? We can't just pass it through like we did up here. We need to see if it is midnight or not, because there is at 0 hour. So what we'll do is we're going to drag off of here, we're going to put another branch in. And we're just going to check if it's midnight. Whereas here, we're checking if it's after 12 or not. And that's 12 hours we're worrying about. We only have 1 hour we care about. So the simplest way to do that is to drag off of here, put an exclamation point in, and an equal sign. We want it to not be equal to, and however, I'm not going to do it that way. I lied. We are going to do what I said. Just the easiest way to do it is get your hours. So get hours local, put your exclamation point in, not equal to integer, plug that into there. So we want it to be not equal to 0. If it is not equal to 0, then there is nothing for it to do because it is not midnight. It's any other time but midnight. So what I'm going to do is literally just copy these two bits, the hours local and that conversion, bring it down here, plug that into my true. I'm just going to raise this all up here. Move that there, move this there, and then I'll plug my hours local into there. If, however, it is midnight, well, I want to set my hours local from that 0 to 12. And again, I'm just going to paste what's in my buffer from earlier, which is that conversion and set text. And I'm just going to drag that into there. And I'm going to drag that up there. I'm going to drag this out and plug it into here. And likewise, do the same there. Again, we haven't actually told it to display anything yet. So if we hit run, you'll just see nothing there. So I'm going to do hours local text. Again, just going to put get. Because for some reason you can't drop it in. It won't convert. And then drag it in so it converts it over. And there we go. It should now display an hour. Either a 12-hour version or a 24-hour version. Compile and save. Go back to our designer. And we're going to go to our minutes. Our minutes are fortunately fairly easy. We do have one little small step to do. And we are going to create binding. This one we will name, so let me just minimize that. We will name this one get minutes, or get minute. I'm going to create a new category, which will be called clock. And I'm going to put my hours and minutes in there. So with clock, we just need to consider, is it before or after 10? Not 10 in the morning or 10 in the night. Is the current minute value greater than 10 or less than 10? Because again, it will change the way this sets up. Right now it has two values in there, 5 and a 9. If it was just, 11:09, the O wouldn't show up. It'd be 11 or 23:9. So we need to have that 0 put in so it has that even spacing. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to drag in our game time. We're going to get it. We are going to get from there a copy. And it is the first part of the array we want, or the first item, the first column in the array, which is our minutes, because our seconds is the 0. And again, we are going to drag off of this, promote to local, and this will be our minutes local. Hook up the execute nodes. From here, we want a branch, not a breach. I'm not sure where that is even. Drag that up a bit. Give yourself a bit more space. And then get your minutes local. Not set. Sorry about that. Get. And we want to drag off of here. And I'm going to do less than or equal to. If it's less than or equal to 9, then I want to make the change this time. I know I'm changing up from a bit how I did it earlier. It is slightly bad form of me to do so. You should really be consistent. I should actually be doing this as greater than or equal to 10 and switching around my true and false pins. But I just want to show you there are different sort of setups you can do for this. And it doesn't really change anything. It does the same thing. It's just how you conceptualize the code. I'm going to create a new variable that's going to be known as minutes text local. Again, the default value will be 0. Compile and save. And we are going to set it both on the true and on the false. We are just going to do different things with it. Off the false. So if it is not less than or equal to 9, then we have a 10 or greater, a 10 to 59 there. So I don't need to do anything outside of setting it to be equal to the integer value itself. So I'm just going to plug those into there. And that into my return. Put a reroute in for a second later. Actually, let's plug that in now, just so it's already plugged in. And like before, I'm going to append. And I am going to plug in my minute local text for that 0 in there. And plug in my minute local integer for my B. And it should now work. Compile and save. And I'm going to hit play now just to see it work. It isn't. What have I done wrong? I am just double checking something real quick. Minutes local get is 1. Set to 1. I forgot to actually say display anything there. That was fairly stupid of me. So I don't like when it does this. Why are you doing this to me? There we go. Sometimes the local will vanish. Just keep clicking around the graph until it shows back up. I haven't figured out why. or how to get it to come back easier. So plug that in, it'll convert it. You can hear my dog probably moving around in the background. Compile, save, and hit play. And now we have a time. It will tick up. There we go. So you can see it ticking up. I forgot we set the hour to 11 as our default hour. So we now see that working. We can convert it. You won't see any difference though. It's not doing anything yet. So compile, save. We've already done that. Now comes our first kind of weird part. Yep, I know I need to do the colon. In fact, actually in my test file, I forgot to do the colon. And then remembered right before I went to record this that I hadn't finished. So I am going to hit create binding, and I am going to name this one get seconds special. And this one is going to be, again, a bit complex because we have to do what we've done in the get minutes and hours with that 0, as well as account for what we did in the get hours with the 12-hour clock versus the 24-hour clock. This will go into our clock settings there. And the first thing I am going to do is I am going to check, just like I did in the get hour, is it military time or not? Sorry, it's the second thing I did in the hour one. The reason why I'm doing this first is, if it is military time, I don't need the seconds. With the hours, regardless of the setup I'm using, I need the hours. So I'm going to drag in, military time. I'm going to drag in branch. And if it is military time, I want it to display the seconds. If it's not, I want to display AM, PM. So I'm going to give myself a fair amount of room. So on this top part, I am going to grab my game time. I'm going to get it. And from here, I'm going to get a copy. Oop, that was a reference. I'm going to get a copy. And I'm going to copy the first spot, which is the smallest number I have, which is my seconds, and I set that to 0. I am going to drag off of here, and I'm going to create a local variable called seconds special local. I'm going to drag off my true. And we're going to set it there. Sorry, I got distracted, so I was trying to figure out how I had laid out my pins on the other version, or sorry, the nodes in the other version. And from here, I am going to drag off and create a new branch. What this branch will do is going to check if the seconds are less than 10 seconds or greater than 10 seconds. Same idea with the minutes and the hours, is we don't want to have only one digit on screen. We want 2 digits. So I'm going to get my seconds local special. I'm going to drag it out here. And I am going to check if it is less than or equal to 9. Again, I could do less than 10. I could do greater than 9. And I'm going to plug that into there. So if it is, just so it's a little bit neater looking, I did a bad job of moving these nodes around. If it is 9 or less, we want to add in that 0 on the true. So I'm going to create a new variable called second special, keep forgetting that special part, special local, or sorry, text local. Going to drag into there. And this one will have the append on it. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of room to play with by putting another reroute in. And I'm going to back drag off of this one, type in append. Make sure the default in there is 0 for that special text. Plug it into here. There we go. We have our 0 in. Going to take the actual value. Can't plug it in directly, so we have to convert it. Just going to move that over so I have enough room for the conversion node. And there's our conversion node. So now it will display a time based on 2 digits always showing up on all parts of the clock if we are in military time and civilian time. So if it is 10 or more, then we just really want to set our clock and move on. So I'm just going to add the reroute in, plug that in there, and to set it, I'm just going to grab my seconds special local get, allow it to convert it over, drag that into there a tiny bit. In fact, I'm going to just, so it looks a little bit nicer and neater to me. So that is our military time all set up. Now we just need to set up our AM, PM. This is where I'm going to do the thing I hate, which is hard coding. So I'm going to drag off this false, and we're going to get another branch. And on this one, I'm going to copy the game time and the get, and I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm going to change this to 2, because I need to know what hour it is. And off of here, I need to know if it's less than or equal to 12. I could also do, greater than or equal to 12. I could also do less than, greater than 11. But I'm going to do less than or equal to 12. I want the equals in just to make sure I get that 12. I'm going to plug that into there. So if the hours are greater than 12, then it is the afternoon. And I'm going to drag my special text in there, and I'm going to type in PM. And I'm going to plug that into here. And then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. I'm going to very quickly, before I forget to do that, change that to AM. Plug that into the false. So if it is less than 12 o'clock, then it is 11 a.m. or 10 or any other time really, that first 12 hours of the day, and plug it into there. So now my AM PM is set up. I just need that return value. So the return value will be my local text, and it will convert it over for me. Let's give it a little bit of room so we can plug it in so it's a little bit neater. And there we go. That finishes out our hours. Our seconds special. Now we have that one last little bit to do, which is this little spacer here between the AM and the minute, or the minute and the seconds. And I'm just going to go into bind. I'm going to create new, and I'm going to name this one I'm going to name it, instead of get, I'm going to name it set spacer special. And this one's fairly straightforward. All we need to do is find out if it's military time or not. So we're going to get this. We're going to create a branch off of there. If it is military time, we want it to display the colon. So we're going to create a new local variable called special spacer local. The default value will be a colon because the default value for our military time is true. So I just want everything to default to that military time setting. I'm going to plug it into there, plug that into there. I could hard code that special in again as the colon, or I could just drag this in and set it equal to itself so it takes its default value. I prefer doing it this way. The other one is I'm going to drag the false in, and I'm actually going to hard code the response that I'll use. Let me just plug a reroute in. There we go. And this will be a fun one to see. I am literally just typing in space. That's it. Nothing else. I put a space bar in. And then I need to set the output. Get special. Plug that into there. And our clock and calendar are all set up. If you compile and save, you can see that we have seconds ticking up rather rapidly. You might go, that's really annoying. I don't want to see it ticking up, or I don't want to read military time. Click, and now we have AM. We can see the time still going up, and we can see that, it looks like it's working. We haven't done anything for this bottom half yet. We'll do that in the latter video today. But I'm going to really quickly just close this out. I'm going to go to my game settings. I'm going to go to my game state. I'm going to close my clock out. Actually, I'm going to open my clock back up. No. After the next video, I'm going to remove the debugging code. And here I am going to change this to 50. I'm also going to change this one to 50, as we learned from the sunrise sunset video. Compile, save, hit play, and let's just watch to make sure that this works correctly. Alright, 15 might have been too slow of a number. I'm going to set it to 1. So it defaults out at 1 second equals 1 hour in game. You can see our sun's moving quite quickly. Well, apparently our sun is off. That is something to note. We will deal with that one later. You know, this does not seem to be moving correctly. Interesting. So one should have turned this into 1 hour a second. Let me go back here for one moment. Make sure everything is set up correct. Ah, that's what's wrong. Okay, sorry about that. For some reason, it didn't save correctly. Yeah, we're going to have a fast sun now, but it's actually going to be timed to the clock correctly. There we go. So our sun is set up correctly, by the way. The error we just saw was because I didn't change both variables. Uh-oh. Oh, that wasn't right. So one small issue is that this hasn't set to the 15th. Let's see if it changes over for the next pass. There we go. So I will debug that one for our summary video. So we know there's now a bug in part of this. Kind of expected that one to show up. I thought it would, we might have bypassed it, but no, that one comes up every so often. So that said, we have set up our clock up here. We have the ability to convert between civilian and military, or 24-hour and 12-hour clocks. And in the next video, which is going to release today, we'll set up the functionality for this bar and for these controls. That said, likes really help the channel. I'd appreciate as many likes as I can possibly get. Go figure. But please, leave a comment. Let me know what's working for you, what you want to see. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything you're struggling with. I'm more than willing to help out. And make sure to subscribe and hit that notify icon so you know when the next tutorial is out. Again, hint, it will be today. And I hope to see you next week. And as always, I hope you have a wonderful day.